Good morning, students. Welcome to live virtual revisionary class conducted by Board of Studies Academics of ICAI. And today we are in our third session for auditing subject. And we have covered our section 5, that is professional ethics and liabilities of auditors. And weightage for the session for the topic was 20 to 27 marks, right? And now today we are going to cover two sections. Section 2 and Section 4, Digital Auditing and Assurance, as well as ESG and SDG. And you are aware that weightage for the same is 4 to 6 marks, right? So these are the topics from where one question will definitely be asked, right? It can be in the combination of descriptive as well as MCQ question. So not taking much of the time, we are having a very learned faculty who is having vast experience, vast practical experience in the auditing subject, CA Achal Jain. And these both the topics are very, very important, not only in the from the study perspective, but also in the practical scenario, right? So not taking much of the time. Achal sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Karna ma'am, and good morning, everyone, and welcome back to this discussion on audit. So as ma'am mentioned, there are a couple of topics we plan to cover. One is on the digital assurance, which is largely about the IT aspects when we look at the audit in today's scenario. And the other one is around the ESG or the sustainability. I would say one of the upcoming things. Both the topics, I would say, are quite relevant these days. Why? Because the scenario has changed, and the way this entire aspect related to audit and various other reporting requirements are coming out, you will be able to appreciate that all of these things are going to further enhance. So we'll just now get on to our topic for the day. So I'll just start my discussion with digital audit, okay, which is about digital audit, or you can say audit in an IT environment. So what all considerations an auditor is going to have around that. Yeah. All right. So when we talk about digital audit, or you can say assurance, or this audit in an environment which is largely around the audit, which is largely around the IT, or you can say some of the aspects which the auditor will have to consider while considering all of these tools and some of these IT aspects. Therein, this environment, one needs to understand, has significantly evolved. In fact, particularly after Corona, the way audit is conducted these days has significantly changed as compared to what was happening earlier. So that's why it is very, very important for the auditor, one, to be mindful of the IT environment which is available at the client place. Plus, it's not only limited to the IT environment which is available at the client place. It is also about the IT usage which the auditor plans to bring in terms of his audit approach, and in terms of some of the tools which are available to the auditor. Okay. So now let's try to understand as to what is this digital audit? What does this digital audit really requires? So we can say that this digital audit is all about placing assurance on the effectiveness of IT systems which are implemented in an organization. See, if you look at any entity these days, whether it's a small organization or a large organization, you'll not see any company or any entity which is operating in a manual environment. Now, what do you mean by manual environment? Manual environment used to be the one which we can say wherein the data, wherein the documents, wherein the records of the entity were maintained largely, you can say, in hard copies, or you can say in a very, very limited manner, they were available in a soft form, or you can say a digital form. But these days, you pick up any entity, and what do you find? That the records, the information which they possess, is largely in a soft form. So it could be the server which the entity may be maintaining in terms of the data which it is having. It could be the ERP packages which the entity may be having in terms of recording the accounting entries, in terms of carrying out the business transactions. Okay, so the idea is not only to talk about the accounting or the audit aspect here. If you look at the organization as a whole, so what has changed and what is evolving year on year, or you can say every now and then, that is the involvement of IT environment. And that is getting strengthened day by day. Strengthened in a sense that even if you look at a small company or a small entity today, each and every entity is focused in terms of enhancing its IT environment. Yeah, why? Because it brings in the efficiency. Efficiency in terms of conducting the day-to-day activities. Efficiency in terms of maintaining the controls within the environment of the organization. Or you can say, even if you talk about the control environment, that can be further strengthened with the involvement of IT, or you can say with the involvement of some of the systems which are there around IT. Yeah. When it comes to the IT environment, this also helps the organization in terms of standardizing its processes, one can say. So why would say that the processes are standardized? Because when you put anything in the form of a system, which is more of working in an automated environment rather than a manual environment wherein the human intervention is as limited as possible. So what will happen? Things will be moving in a particular fashion. Yeah. So the more and more such environment or an organization is going to have, so what will happen? Of course, the processes will become more of streamlined, more of standardized, wherein the human element, or you can say the manual environment, is automatically going to be reduced. And that's why one can say that the IT systems, or you can say the control environment which the organization is going to have in such a scenario, will be stronger as compared to what the organization will be having when the environment is also involving some sort of manual intervention, which is not the case now. Okay, let's take an example to discuss this. Let's suppose if you talk about procurement. Okay, now procurement is very common to any entity. Now, how does this procurement process works in an organization? So if you go to the manual environment, so there will be a person who will raise an indent. So it will be a hard copy, right? So it will go to the relevant department. So you can say it goes to a department. So the department will invite the quotations that will again be in the hard copies. And then the quotations are reviewed by, let's suppose, the same department, on the basis of which orders are placed in terms of purchasing the material. When the material is purchased, there again you'll have a lot of hard copy documents which are then processed to the stores department. Why? Because the stores department will be making sure that all the material which is received is in place physically. And then the stores department will also process some of the hard copy documents, which will then be passed on to the purchase department for verification, as well as the accounts department for accounting entries, for verification, and for payment processing. Now, if you look at this process, so there is so much manual intervention at various places. A lot of hard copy documents are involved. So in such a case, don't you think that there are chances that maybe in some activity or other, some of the errors may occur? Chances of mistakes could be there. And even if you look at the hard copy documents, the way this entire process will run, so of course, it will take some time for one of the document to be processed, then the file to be moved from one department to the other department. Yes or no? Yeah. So this is how generally the process will work. Now, as compared to this, if let's suppose we change this process slightly, So now what are we trying to do? So now what we will try to do is we'll just try to bring in some sort of automated system in respect of this. And this automated system will be working more in a IT environment rather than this hard copy environment. So what will happen? So the user who will be placing the indent, maybe he has been given some tool or maybe he is given some system. So on a system, he is required to place the request. Okay, so this request goes to the relevant department. So if let's suppose this has to be done through a system, let's suppose there's an ERP system in place, say Oracle, SAP, or any other ERP environment which the entity may be using. So what will happen with the click of a button? So this indent goes to the other department. Yes or no? Yeah. Now, when the other department has received this, so what will happen? Now, other department will also be placing the request for the quotations. Now, all of these quotations will again be updated on the systems. So anybody who has got the access to that can review it at any point of time, which is again getting processed through the system on the basis of the quotations which are received. So what do? You generate the purchase order, which is again on the system, which has got all the ingredients, which has got all the inputs in terms of what is required to be received at what price, which has been compared with the quotations. And in terms of qualitative aspects as well, each and everything is specified in that particular document. Now, once the document is processed in terms of purchasing the material, and once the material is received, so what will happen? This entire aspect is then taken care of not only by the procurement department, but also by the stores department, also by the accounts department at the same place. Why? Because all of this information is available at one place. And what is that? ERP system. So each and every relevant department who will be executing one activity or the other in respect of maybe the verification of the material, in respect of processing of the documents, or in respect of ensuring that the quality is there as around the request which has been placed, or in respect of processing of payment. So all of these things can be done in a easy manner, number one. This can also be significantly time-saving exercise. Why? Because the documents are not required to be moved from one place to another place. And the chances of making a mistake will automatically get reduced. Why? Because in such a case, all of these documents are available at one place. All of those documents are integrated to each other. And all of these departments are also integrated to each other through this ERP system. So that's why a standardized document is also in place. You can say a standardized process is also in place, which could be set up by the organization to ensure that this is how the transaction will be executed, or this is how the process will be executed. Yeah. So this is what the organizations are now moving towards. So they are just trying to change their processes from one of the manual environment, or which used to be the manual environment, to more of the automated environment. So that's why in such an environment, it becomes extremely important for the auditor to be wary of these things. Yes or no? Because if let's suppose auditor were to audit this, so how will the auditor audit this? Only and only when the auditor will have an understanding of all of these aspects. Otherwise, it will become very challenging for him. Yes or no? Yeah. So these are some of the things which we now need to understand, which we now need to take care when it comes to the audit, or when it comes to the audit in an IT environment. So this is largely what the digital audit is all about. Okay, so as we discussed, it will have some benefits. It will also have some challenges alongside, but of course, there are a lot of benefits which are going to come along. So now what is going to happen? Of course, efficiency and effectiveness will be there. This will also lead to better audit quality. Now, when it comes to the audit quality, so again, we are not looking at it from the auditor's perspective. We are also looking at it from the management's perspective. Why? Because if let's suppose the management will work on such type of processes wherein the control environment can be strengthened, of course, this is going to help the audit process. The costs definitely are going to be reduced. And on the data, on the information which is available in more of a standardized manner, its processing will be much easier. And these days, we keep hearing a lot about this AI, about data analytics. So data analytics is already in place for quite some time now. Plus, there are various other audit tools which are available. But how do you use those audit tools? How do you apply all of these AI or various other techniques in terms of processing of the information? That is only possible when the information is available. And that is only possible when the information is available in a manner on which the tools can work. Yes or no? Otherwise, how will the auditor be using such tools? Correct? So that's why it becomes very important. And this becomes very helpful for the auditor. Now comes the next important aspect, and that is about risk assessment. See, when it comes to the audit, what is the prime thing for the auditor? Assessment of risk. And this assessment of risk, in a way, is also required to be done by the management. You can say the entity. If the entity will strengthen the process, of course, the risks which are attached to that particular process will automatically get reduced. Because what is it that the management will look at? What are the chances of making a mistake? Or what are the chances that any error could occur in an organization in terms of any of its processes against which they will set up the controls? If let's suppose this is more of automated, this is more of system driven, then definitely the chances of errors, chances of making the mistake will be reduced. So thereby, what is the objective which the organization is trying to achieve? To cut down on the risks as much as possible. And that is only going to help the auditor. Why? Because auditor will also be benefited by this. If the risks will be cut down, then of course, in terms of the assessment of the risk which the auditor will be doing, and in terms of looking at some of the risks, some of the processes which are more prone to such type of risks, this will only help the auditor, right? Yeah, so this is, I would say, broadly about the digital audit. And of course, there are a lot of considerations which are involved in this. And because this system is such, so that's why this system also comes with various challenges. But the point is that are those challenges providing the adequate benefits? The answer is yes. And that's where we need to now be focusing upon as an auditor. Okay. Now, in this audit environment, now what is it that the auditor is expected to achieve? See, the way, as we discussed, the audit is required to be done is now undergoing a change. So there are new technology, we can say, to capture the data. Of course, to automate the audit procedures. Now we are not talking about the management procedures. We are talking about the audit procedures. To analyze the information using those sort of tools, you can say some of those systems which are available with the auditor, and focus on the real risks of the client. See, how is that going to be possible? If let's suppose there are 30 activities, okay, let's suppose you plan your audit, and what do you find? There are a lot of manual activities, there are a lot of other activities which are required to be performed by the auditor, and which are more of repetitive in nature, which require some sort of analysis to be done, which require some sort of processing of information. So let's suppose data is required to be processed. Why? Because you want to draw more of analysis out of that. because once the analysis will be available, that is when the auditor will be taking appropriate actions on that. And all of these things can be taken care of by, let's suppose, some of the tools which are available, okay, which are very commonly found these days. So how can this help the auditor? This can help the auditor in a way that the auditor can now focus more on the outcome rather than on processing. Yeah, because otherwise, what is going to be the challenge on the part of the auditor? Auditor will also have to process the information. Auditor will have to draw the logical sort of conclusions, okay, which are now getting done with the help of some of these tools which are available. And this is how auditor is going to enhance his audit procedures in terms of the qualitative aspects. Correct. And this is actually the expectation out of the auditors as well. Okay, so now with this understanding, can you just help me understand as to what are going to be the advantages which you think are going to be in place once we have some sort of these type of systems in place as far as auditor is concerned? Over to you. Anyone? What do you think are going to be the advantages if we follow these types of systems as an auditor, or this type of process as an auditor? Over to you. Quickly, who will answer this? Yes. What do you think are going to be the advantages on the part of the auditor? Yes, very good. Yes, I think who has raised hand? Prashant, was it you? Who will answer this? Okay, Prashant, you will answer this? Great. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, Prashant, please pick up. Manish, can you please unmute Prashant? Yes. Yes, Prashant, what do you think are going to be the advantages?
One is very obvious: improved audit quality.
Okay, great.
Decrease, there will be lesser human dependence.
Right. So how do you think decreased human dependence is going to be achieved?
Because there will be systems in place.
Right.
So the processing and all these things will be done by the system rather than the people who will be managing those systems.
Okay, very good. What else?
Then the efficiency will be improved,
Okay,
effectiveness, and risk
effectiveness,
assessment will be better.
risk assessment. So can you just elaborate on this point particularly? Risk assessment will be better. So how do you think risk assessment will be better as far as the auditor is concerned? How do you think that will be achieved?
This will be achieved because the management is also putting the systems in place and
Right,
is trying to achieve the through the controls that the risk is minimized. So
right,
auditor will be getting the data in a form which is less error, which is having less error, because overall control will be there in
correct,
place. And
correct.
so the auditor can function in a way that he'll be focusing on those areas which require more attention rather
Exactly.
than doing for the whole thing.
So you can say more critical areas will now be focused upon as
Yes.
against a lot of activities which the auditor generally remains engaged on. Okay, so auditor can save some time in terms of focusing on key areas. So in a way, these tools, one can say, are nothing but the team members of the auditor, isn't it? Yes. Anything else? Anybody else would like to add to? No? All right. So now let's move further. Now, as around the audit, it's important, first of all, to understand the IT environment. Now, this understanding of IT environment or this understanding of processes, in a way, happens to be the first thing on the part of the auditor. Because whenever you plan to perform the audit, so what do you do? What is your first step? Of course, to understand the entity, And of course, to understand the environment in which the entity operates. So that could be the external environment, and that could also be the internal environment. And when it comes to the environment, so environment will involve all of these things. It's not only about the manual, but also about the IT environment. So all of these things are important on the part of the auditor. Why? Because till the time that understanding is not achieved, auditor will not be able to plan his audit procedures at all. Yes or no? Yeah. So each and everything which is there in respect of the process is required to be understood, whether it is about the flow of transactions, okay, or whether it is about any sort of manual or automated controls which are there with the organization, whether it is about any of the technologies which the organization is using, and which will also involve an understanding of which all tools the auditor will be now planning to use as far as his audit approach is going to be concerned. Correct? Now, see, with the evolution of this IT environment, definitely some of the challenges get attached. And even though we are saying that the risks will be minimized, we also need to appreciate the fact that the moment you bring in any process, whether it is automated or manual, doesn't really matter. Some of the challenges will come along and some of the risks will also come along. So let's try to understand as to what are the risks which may come along when we move on to this IT environment. So I think some of the very basic risks which will get attached to that will be the unauthorized access. Yeah, through which, let's suppose there's a system in the organization which is required or over which the access is available only to the CFO of the company. Yes or no? Why? Because it has got some confidential data which everybody is not authorized to access. Now, what is the risk which is attached to this? That because the system and the information is in place, so that's why maybe somebody is accessing this data, okay, for which he is not or she is not authorized to access it. So that's a risk which is attached to that. Now, in such a case, what do you do? As an auditor, in a similar manner, like you'll do for any other risk, you'll also be required to assess all of these types of risks which are there in respect of the IT systems in the organization. Of course, the management would also have looked at some of those types of risks, would also have management controls in respect of those types of risks, but it is also important for the auditor to be assessing all of those types of risks, including the controls which the management would have set up in place as around those risks. Correct? Now, for doing this, can you tell me what are going to be the challenges on the part of the auditor? So I think there's a very common challenge which an auditor will face, and practically this is the most important area which the auditor has to now focus upon. Yes, over to you. What do you think is going to be the challenge on the part of the auditor when it comes to the assessment of the risk, as well as in terms of understanding the controls which the management would have put in place as around the IT risks which are in place? Yes, who will answer this? Over to you. Quickly. Okay, great. I think Prashant is again going to answer this. Yes, Prashant, please go ahead.
Sir, we will first of all require the skill set to
Very good.
understand that that is the biggest challenge the auditor will face, because technologically the auditor and his team has to be equipped to understand the systems.
Correct, correct. Very good. And in fact, this happens to be the most important area. And practically, this happens to be the most challenging area also. Okay. Can you tell me, or somebody, if you can explain, why do you believe that this is the most challenging area for the auditors these days? Yes, anyone? Why do you think this is the most challenging area for the auditor these days? Yes, Khushi, you'll answer this. Why do you think this is the most challenging area for the auditors these days? Yes, Khushi, you'll answer this. Okay, Khalid, you'll answer this. As around this skill set. Okay, why do you think it's the challenging area? Yes, Khalid, please go ahead. Yes, Khalid, please go ahead. Yes, Khalid, you can raise hand quickly. You can raise hand. I think you are unmuted now. You can answer. Okay, Geeta, if you are around, if you can answer this. Geeta, if you are around, you'll answer this.
Yes, sir. Because of new
Yes,
technologies and new updates are coming, and because of that, auditor are very challenging.
correct. And in fact, when you look at the IT systems, okay, so it's a new skill set in itself. Yes or no? So now today, if you look at the auditors, if you look at the audit team, so will they have the skill set in respect of different types of systems which are available at the organizations? Because it's not only one organization which is required to be audited. Each and every organization may have a different set of systems in place. Okay. Maybe some place you will find SAP. Maybe one place you will find as basic as tele system which is in place, or maybe the client is having his own customized ERP package. Yes or no? So to have an understanding of that system, of course you can go and understand from the entity, but till the time you don't have the skill set, can you just get into the depth of each and every aspect related to that IT system? The answer is no. So that's why a specific skill set is required on the part of the auditor. And how do you achieve that skill set? So that skill set is achieved by having the IT experts in the audit team. Yes or no? Yeah. So if the IT experts are going to be involved as part of the audit team members, that is when the auditor will be able to get on to a detailed understanding of all of that IT environment or the systems which are available. Number one. And that is when the auditor will be able to get on to the risk assessment. Otherwise, the risk assessment may not be done. Maybe the management has missed out, and maybe the auditor is also going to miss out on that. So that's why if you look at the audit of any entity, particularly the ones which are very heavily involved in terms of the IT environment, which are using sophisticated IT environment. So therein, the audit is largely about the audit of IT systems. Yeah, because everything is automated, everything is system driven. Yeah, so that's why a good dependency of the auditor, or you can say the audit team, is on the IT systems, or you can say on the systems audit. And that can only be achieved when the auditor will be having those IT experts. Correct? Now, there's also a risk which you call as cyber risk. Now, what is this cyber risk? You can say a cyber attack, which is an attempt to gain unauthorized access to a computing system or the network with an intent to cause damage, steal, expose, alter, disable, or destroy the data. And in fact, this is again something which has come up quite significantly, and this is an upcoming area which is quite significantly discussed, cyber security. Every now and then you get to hear about this. Now, when it comes to the cyber risk, again, you keep hearing about different types of cyber risks or cyber attacks which are possible. Okay, it could be in the form of ransomware, it could be in the form of Trojan. Okay, all of these are what? Phishing, whaling. Many a times you receive emails, yeah, which are phishing emails. Every now and then you keep hearing from the regulators, from different authorities, that avoid the messages, avoid the emails. Just make sure that the access to each of these emails or the messages that you do is done in a careful manner. So what are these? These are nothing but attempts for the cyber attacks, right? So now, as an auditor, it is important for the auditor to be aware of some of these things. Yes or no? Yeah, all of these things become important. Why? Because only and only when the auditor will be having an understanding of these types of risks, which could be there at the organization, auditor will be able to incorporate that as part of his audit procedures, or you can say the audit approach or the audit planning. Yeah. So that's where assessment of the cyber risk becomes important, in which case auditor will have to look at each and every aspect related to the cyber risk. Impact of the cyber risk, which is possible on the systems, on the financial information of the organization, and of course, how to manage that cyber risk. Yeah. So in terms of managing the cyber risk, what is required? A strategic approach is required that can help the organization to gain a holistic understanding of the cyber risks, threats facing their organization and other financial institutions. Okay. In which case they will also be assessing the existing IT and cyber security program, their capabilities against the relevant regulatory requirements. Align the cyber security and the IT information or the systems which they will be having. Yeah. So some of these things become important on the part of the organization. Correct. Now, moving further. Now we have talked about largely this risk assessment, identification of the risk, how to take care of these types of risks which are attached to the IT, cyber risk, or you can say the tools which the auditor is going to use, the audit approach which is going to be in place. Yeah. So all of these things, if you look at the audit process, these are nothing but a part of largely the similar sort of audit process that the one will have in place. Correct. Now, moving further. Now, control consideration for the cyber risk. Now, when it comes to the control, one must always understand that the controls are the one which are required to be placed by the organization. Okay, so control is not something which the auditor will bring in. Auditor is there to test the controls, but who is required to set up that? Who is required to ensure that the controls are in place and are also operating effectively? That is the responsibility of the management. Okay. Now, in respect of these types of control, now what could be the controls? So the controls could be around the vendor setup and the modifications. Now, what does it mean and how do you achieve this? So let's try to look at some of the activities which could be there in the organization and how will these controls be set up. One, who is responsible for making changes to vendor master data? See, every time an organization will be having some data. So there are two ways this data is always looked at. One is the master data. Master data, you can say, is the core data. Okay. Let's suppose an entity is transacting with 50 vendors. So what do? They will record all of those vendors in their systems. First of all, will do some sort of KYC in respect of all of those vendors, and those vendors are then sort of placed in their systems against which different transactions will be carried out. Now, This is a good way to begin with, and this also acts in a, you can say, a sort of control exercise. Why? Because beyond these 50 vendors, if any transaction has to take place, so what do you need? You need to set up that vendor in the system first of all, which will require some authorization. Yes or no? So that's why if any sort of intervention is required wherein some unauthorized transaction is planned to be executed by, let's suppose, any person in the organization, so what will he do? He will either add a vendor to this master data or maybe modify any of the vendors from this master data. Yeah. So now who is responsible for making changes to that? Is this process centralized or decentralized? So the organization needs to put a control in place. Are other communication channels such as email used to request changes to vendor master data? If yes, consider if multi-factor authentication is enabled for email. So if, let's suppose, this has to happen through email, so there again, you need to have some authentication system in place. What systems and technologies are used to initiate, authorize, and process requests related to changes to vendor master data? Now, this is again important. Yeah, so all of these things, all of these aspects are required to be looked at by whom? Management. Are the authentication protocols defined to verify the modification to vendor master data? For example, callback procedures, multi-factor authentication. Let's suppose maybe the relevant person who is authorized to make the changes to the vendor master data. Okay, let's suppose that is Mr. X in the organization. Now, Mr. X receives an email, let's suppose from a particular department. Now, there has to be a process in place. Just because Mr. X has received an email doesn't mean he can do the changes. There has to be some authentication on the basis of which he will be processing that. And Mr. X, before he does that, he will also be requiring the approval of, let's suppose, some other person before doing that. Yeah. So all of these things are what? They are nothing but the controls around any of these risks which could be there in relation to the system, or you can say the cyber risk. Yeah. Similarly, different types of controls could be set up in the organization. Controls around electronic transfer of funds, again, a very important exercise. See, when it comes to the banking, or you can say payment processing particularly, this happens to be an extremely important, extremely sensitive activity over which significant controls are required. Otherwise, what may happen? Otherwise, this may lead to fraud. Yes or no? Yeah. So that's why all of these controls are important on the part of the organization to put in place. Right? Now, moving on to remote audit. Now, what is a remote audit? This is also very commonly called as virtual audit or audit in an online environment, or you can say online audit. See, this has evolved, or I would say this has actually come up since Corona, and this is evolving now. Now, what does it mean? See, it means doing the audit in an online environment. Let's suppose if you go back to the Corona days, when physical movement was not possible, if let's suppose you are not required or not allowed to move to the client place, maybe there are some restrictions. Okay, and you were to do the physical verification. So how will you do the physical verification? Physical verification is an important exercise for the inventory at the year end. So how do you achieve that? So that can be achieved online. So maybe the management, while they do this physical verification, they can set up some system through which the auditor, even though he is not physically available, he may be looking at that complete physical verification exercise, which is observed by the auditor. Because what is the role of the auditor? Auditor is not there to physically verify. Auditor is there to observe the physical verification which the management must be doing, right? So if that is done in a remote manner, remote means when the auditor is sitting online and watching that and not physically involved with the client over there at the client place. So that is what you call as an exercise which is done in a remote manner or in a virtual manner or online manner. Nowadays, these types of processes, as far as audit procedures are concerned, have significantly increased. Now, what does it involve? One, planning. So when it comes to the planning meetings, so they can happen over the Zoom calls, or you can say the online meetings. So it is not necessary to be at one place physically, or maybe even if the audit team is you can say, let's suppose, sitting together in their office, they can always have a con call, they can always have a video conference with the client. Because when it comes to the client place, so now a client, let's suppose, has a corporate office, and let's suppose they have got 6 plants. Now each and every plant team, if let's suppose, is required to be involved in the audit, so what can they do? They can have a video conferencing wherein all of these parties can come together and they can have a planning meeting. And this planning meeting or this planning discussion is what? This is nothing but a part of audit procedure, right? Yeah. So this is one way through which the audit is now being performed significantly. Number two, see, more of the information is now getting collected by the audit teams in a soft form. Now there again, what do? Either you can go to the client place, you can just take the data in a pen drive, or you can ask for the information over email. Okay, or maybe you can set up a call with the client. You can receive the information. You can always have the video call. You can always have the calls through which you can just look at the things in an online environment. So that's why the need to be physically available at the client place will get reduced. Yes or no? Yeah. Now, all of these things are increasing day by day. Why? Because of the systems which have improved, because of this technology which has come up. And this again will have its own advantages as well as disadvantages. Yeah. But irrespective of whether it will have some disadvantages or not, this is something which has come up now. And this is something which is now going to increase significantly. And that's why, as far as its disadvantages are concerned, so what is it that you need to do? Just need to focus upon that some of these things or some of these challenges or disadvantages are reduced, or you can say are reduced as much as possible, because that is going to enhance the audit procedure. Correct? Yeah. So now this is again very, very important on the part of the auditor. And next aspect is about the technologies. See, when it comes to the technologies, it's also all about tools. Different tools are now available. So when you talk about some of the tools, for example, IDEA happens to be one of the software, which is a very commonly used tool, very commonly used by various auditors in terms of processing of information. Now, what do you mean by processing of information? Can you give me an example? Yes, anyone, can you give me an example for processing of information by the auditor through usage of a tool? Over to you. Yes, tell me. Any example that comes to your mind through which auditor can use the tool and process the information? Yes, quickly. Over to you. Any example that comes to your mind? Who'll answer this? Yes, quickly, huh? Who will answer this? Khalid, you will answer this? Khalid, any procedure or any activity you think the auditor can perform through the tools? Prashant, Geeta, any activity that comes to your mind which the auditor can perform through the tools that it will have? Yes. Any activity that comes to your mind? See, when it comes to the sample selection, so is that a part of audit activity or not? Tell me. Yes or no? Sample selection. So when it comes to the data which the auditor will receive, so what will he need? He will need to process the information. Now, what is the processing of information in such a case? Can the auditor check each and every sample? Can he check this entire population? That is not required to be done. So what will he need? He will need some samples to be selected. Okay, so now two questions are required to be answered in such a case. That if, let's suppose, there's a population of 1 lakh items, how many samples should be selected? That's the first question. And which all samples need to be tested? Now that is where the tools are going to help the auditor. And that is where some of these audit tools are significantly applied by the auditor. Why? Because the tools will help the auditor to pick up the samples. Not only in terms of numbers, let's suppose 150 samples are required to be selected. So that is again something which the tool will help the auditor. And which all 150 samples will be selected, that again will be performed with the help of the tools, or you can say some of these techniques which are available. Correct? Yeah. So similarly, different tools are available for the auditor, using which auditor can analyze the information. Auditor can draw logical assumptions. Correct? Power BI, again, you keep hearing about Power BI quite a lot. What is that? It is nothing but a business intelligence platform. Again, a tool, or you can say some sort of system that provides non-technical business users with tools for aggregating, analyzing, visualizing, and sharing data. From audit perspective, what do? Such visualization tools can be used to find the outliers in the population. It can also be used for reporting purposes. This is particularly used for reporting purposes by the auditors. Okay. Yeah. Right. So now, when it comes to some of these tools, we have talked about it. AI again is a very common thing that you get to hear these days. Right. All of these tools are actually going to help the auditor in terms of various activities, various procedures which are required to be performed. So now what we will do is, now we will move on to the questions. I think we have discussed about this quite a lot. So now what I'll do is I'll just move on to some of the questions. So some of the questions we have picked up for our discussion, and I'll also be using this RTP. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I would now require your involvement. You need to answer these questions. Okay. Shant, Geeta, Khalid. Okay, so let's look at the first one. So Kanya, a CA final student, is of the view that cyber risks are issues of IT and result only in information lost to an entity. She also feels that many cyber attacks are not directly targeted at financial systems and do not pose risk of material misstatement to financial statements of an entity. What do you think? Do you think our thoughts are appropriate? What is your thought process? Over to you. Yes. Over to you quickly. Geeta, you'll answer this. Over to you. Khalid, you'll answer this. Prashant?
Sir, it is a financial as well as business risk.
Okay.
Cyber risk is.
Right. So you can just elaborate. Let's suppose you have this question in the examination. So please explain the way you will write it in the examination. You need to elaborate. Just few words. Khalid, you'll answer this. Prashant? Any thoughts on this? No? Okay, Prashant, yes, please go ahead.
So since the cyber attack is not only a IT risk, it is also an organizational risk. It
Right,
can there will be an unauthorized access of the data,
right,
changes made to the data,
right,
and uh, it may lead to the loss of data,
right.
and there can be a third party involvement.
Okay,
All these are can have an impact on the way the data is processed and stored, and the data that will be available to the auditor.
right,
So, and also there can be an internal involvement of the personnel from the organization also.
correct,
So these can be, there can be a risk of material misstatement made to the financial statement of the entity, and
right,
it is not just an IT risk. So the view of this Sukanya is not correct in my opinion.
right. Good, very good. Yes, any more thoughts? So let's look at this. Okay, so now, when it comes to the cyber risks, I think we've already talked about it briefly. See, this is not a IT issue alone. Okay, to say that this is something which is restricted only to the IT will not be appropriate. It's more of a risk which flows down to the organization as a whole, and that's why entire business which is there in the organization becomes subject to such type of risks. It affects the entity's reputation and can lead to many other consequences. So what could that be? Of course, regulatory costs could be the one. Business interruptions causing an operational challenge. Of course, because if the business is interrupted, then of course it will be a big hindrance. Okay, it can be a big challenge for the organization, and which generally happens also. Many a times you get to hear about this, that maybe the data was hacked or maybe some of the systems were hacked, and that's why this entire system or the entire organization was not able to operate for some period of time, maybe for a few days, for a few hours. Yeah, you get to hear about this or not? So what is that? That is nothing but a cyber attack. Yes or no? Data loss, again a very significant risk which is attached to that. And of course, when it comes to the organization, because the organization is expected to be catering to different types of organizations who have some expectations as far as the systems which this particular organization must be following, on the basis of which it will have some reputation. So that reputation loss, okay, that in itself is a big risk on the part of the organization. Litigation. Okay, ransomware. Now ransomware is very commonly heard. So in such a case, what do? you can't do anything. Why? Because your data in a way is completely hacked. Yeah. But you can say it's a kind of virus which has been sort of, injected in the systems. So more common these days. In fact, I would say very common these days where entire systems are encrypted. Intellectual property theft, which may not only take the competitive advantage, but which may also result in any impairment or impediment charge because of the loss of intellectual property, which is also possible. Incident response cost, which could be for investigations and remediations. Of course, if let's suppose the organization will face any sort of cyber attack, so eventually what will happen? Some sort of remediation will be required. So the costs are going to be involved for that. Investigations may also be involved, which will again involve some sort of costs on the part of the organization. Yeah. And which can be quite significant. So when you talk about these costs could be quite significant depending again the type of cyber attack which was there. Breach of privacy. So we have already talked about it. If the data loss is there, so of course the breach of privacy is something which is a risk for the organization. If the personal data of a consumer is hacked, it could have a significant impact on the organization. See, the organization would be maintaining the data of various parties. And these days, when the data is maintained, it involves a lot of information in respect of different parties, for which the organization remains responsible to all of those parties. So that's why if there is a breach of privacy, so this can again lead to litigations, right? Fines and penalties. It may happen that many cyber attacks are not directly targeted at financial systems. However, the access gained by the attackers may provide them the ability to manipulate or modify the financial records, modify key automated business rules, modify automated controls which are relied upon by the management. Obviously, yeah. Further, the auditor should consider whether cyber risk represents a risk of material misstatement to the financial statement as a part of audit risk assessment activities. Now, this part is important. Risk assessment. Why is this important? Because the entire audit is dependent on this risk assessment. If the risk assessment goes wrong, this entire audit will go wrong. Because when it comes to the audit procedures, what is that? Audit procedure is nothing but an outcome of risk assessment. What are the areas to be focused upon? What are the areas not to be focused upon? Okay. And that is where this type of risk cannot be ignored by the auditor. So the focus should be on what? Understanding the cyber risk, which is of prime importance. Because if the understanding is not there, then of course the assessment is not possible, right? And consequently, designing of audit procedures will also go wrong. So that's why it's a very important area for the auditor. Correct? Clear on this? All right. So next, move on to next one. A company is planning to use robotics process automation. You can again say a kind of tool which is available with the auditor to streamline its hiring process. Okay, so now company is planning to use this automation. So you can say it's a sort of automation. Earlier, the company used to hire from the campuses of various management institutes, leading to high recruitment costs, inefficient hire yield, and resultant lack of diversity. How RPA means robotic process automation can be used to automate the hiring process. List out tentative few such steps. What could be the likely benefits of using RPA in hiring process? Over to you. I think this is something which you very commonly see these days. Yes, over to you. You need to talk about this RPA in a way. Yes. Who'll answer this? Khalid, you'll answer this? Khalid? Yes, please go ahead. See, it's very important that some of these questions we are picking up, you try to attempt. It doesn't matter whether you are able to answer that right or wrong. It doesn't matter whether your answer is sufficient enough or not, but at least something you should attempt, because it's more of a revisionary thing. That's why you have been spending so much time on this. You wake up in the morning, okay, you are attending this session. Yeah, so if you don't do that, that doesn't help you much. Yes or no? So I think this is for your advantage. Yes, Khalid, please go ahead. I think you can raise hand. Khalid, please go ahead. Quickly. I think you are already unmuted, Khalid. You can answer this now. Yes, Khalid, please go ahead. I can see you are unmuted now. Okay, Geeta, you'll answer this. Yes.
Sir, actually, I don't know much about this RPA process.
Okay, so just think about it. Okay, on the basis of the information which is given in the question itself, I would say it is possible for you to think about it, because this sort of problem you may also be facing in the exam. Okay,
Is to automate the hiring
so
process.
just think about it. Okay, so I think Khalid is not able to speak. No worries. So you can answer this on the chat, Khalida. I'll read that for you. Yes. Just try to think about it. So what is this robotic process automation? Okay, because something around hiring is being discussed. So what do you think could be the automated thing?
The software technology that eliminates humans actually interacting with the digital and software process efficient control.
Yes. All right. So let's look at this. Okay. RPA can be used to streamline hiring process in a company. Okay. So what do you do? So what are the tentative steps? Place the advertisements on social media or career advice sites. Do you see this or not? Okay. In fact, this is how you see the advertisements on social media. Link redirects candidate to a career site. Career site will pull the information of the candidate. An algorithm scans the applicants for desired and suitable roles. So now this entire processing of, you can say, the CV. Okay, so CV, do you submit or not? Okay, so do you upload or not? Do you send across or not? So now what is going to happen? So it's not going to be analyzed, you can say sort of reviewed by a person, or it is not a manual exercise. Okay, so it's automated. So the system is doing that for the organization. Selected candidates may be asked to play online games to assess their skills. Now you may be thinking, sir, what are these games? So the games could be in terms of the aptitude test. Okay, or maybe some sort of skill set which the organization is looking at as far as its requirements are concerned, right? a certain percentage of these applications are called for a video interview. So what do? Eventually, you'll call for a video interview. And that interview also is now automated. So a person is not necessarily required to be in an interview. Maybe, okay, it's done in a robotic manner. Why? Because there will be a system which will have some tailor-made questions for the candidate, and the candidate will be required to answer that. Yes or no? So that's why what do you find? That this entire system of hiring is now automated. Number one, there's no manual intervention at all. It is also sort of predetermined in terms of which all steps are required to be put in place. So that's why some sort of bias which could be there when it comes to the hiring. Okay. Some sort of requirement which the management may be having. Okay. So if you look at the requirement of the question, it says, in the past, there has been a lack of diversity. Let's suppose the organization wants to hire 5 male, 5 female. So this can easily be put into the system. Yeah, so that's how the system will be processing the information. That's how the system will be processing the CVs of the candidates. Correct? Yeah. Plus the skill set which is required is already known to the organization. So you can just put down the queries. If they can just put down the questions which will test the candidates as around those requirements of the organization, this can easily be taken care of by the system. Yes or no? So how is this going to benefit some of these challenges which the organization is facing? What is that? Recruitment cost. So this will be cut down significantly, right? Plus the biggest challenge which the organization is facing is what? Inefficient hire yield. So they hire, but the employees are not so efficient. Okay. So the quality is not there. Why? Because maybe the process is not able to lead to the proper outcome or the desired outcome. And what was that process? That was the manual process. So that's why they now change it to a different process. Correct? Clear on this? Therefore, some of these challenges will automatically get reduced. Right? In fact, when it comes to the hiring, I'm not sure whether you have seen this or not. Okay, maybe you can just do Google because some of you may not have much clarity. Okay, many organizations have started testing this process. Some of the organizations are already hiring the candidates through this automated system in place, which is also called as robotic hiring. But some of the organizations who may not be using this in a full-fledged manner have already started testing this. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 hires they are having through this system. So this technology, or you can say this process, is significantly evolving. Very soon you'll have a system wherein the hiring will not be done in a manual manner. Very soon you will see this happening. This will all get automated. Why? Because this will provide some benefits to the organization. What are those benefits? Reduce the full-time effort involved. Okay. Reduce the impact of recruiter biases, which is a big challenge. Increase the efficiency of mapping of interested candidates. Recruitment costs will be reduced. Why? Because people are not going to be involved. It's one system which will do the hiring for the organization. And obviously, because of which the higher yield will improve. Time to hire. See, if you look at that system, I think that has a capacity, that has the capability to hire the candidates and to interview the candidates. Okay, first of all, to interview the candidates, if let's suppose you run the system and you run the system at multiple places. Okay, so many candidates can be interviewed simultaneously. But if let's suppose people are involved, then for every candidate you need one person. Yes or no? So the time to hire will significantly be reduced. Right? Yeah. Clear on this, everyone? Geeta, you're clear on this now? Geeta, clear on this? Okay, so I think Khalid also answered this earlier. So he said maybe the shortlisting is now based on a process or a system. All right, sure. Now let's move on to the next one. IT dependencies also arise due to system generated reports and interfaces. Okay. How do such IT dependencies arise? That is one. Why is it important to identify IT dependencies to develop an effective and efficient audit approach? Over to you. Your thoughts on this. Why is it important? In relation to audit, why do you think it will be important? Yes. Quickly, huh? Over to you. Who will answer this? Why is this important? All right, so let's look at this. See, IT dependencies are created when IT is used to initiate, authorize, record, process, or report transactions or other financial data for inclusion in the financial statements. Why? Because everything is system driven. So obviously your dependency has to be there on that particular system. What are system generated reports? As the terminology says, reports generated by the systems. Yes or no? System generated reports means what? Reports which are generated by the system. Now, what do you mean by report? Report means you are looking at some outcome in a particular manner, in a particular format. Okay. So that is nothing but the information. And what are the systems we are talking about? These are the IT systems. These reports are often used in entities' execution of a manual control, including business performance reviews, or maybe the source of entity information used by us when selecting items for the testing, performing substantive test of details, or performing analytical procedures. For example, customer aging report. Okay, very commonly you generate this report. What is the report? Aging of the customers. So in a report on the aging, what do you want to achieve? So you'll want to see as to what is the age of the customers. Means how many customers are outstanding for more than 30 days. How many customers are outstanding for more than 6 months. Customers outstanding for more than 1 year. Customers outstanding for more than 2 years, more than 3 years. So why will the business need such information? Okay. To set up a system, number one, so that some of these aged customers do not become aged. Number one. Number two, to improve upon the collections. See, for the business, sales is not the only thing. Yes or no? Through sales, do you achieve everything in the business? No. What if the sales are increasing in the business, but the collections are not improving? Okay. So now the business will be not having the adequate cash flows. So that's why the business will want to ensure that the appropriate cash flows are in place. And how do you have the cash flows? Do you go and borrow? Do you borrow funds, maybe in the form of equity or the loan? No, you want to generate the funds. So that's why this process is important. And for this process to be run, for this process to be running in an effective manner, what do you need? This report is required. Yeah. So similarly, different reports could be required for different processes, for different outcomes. Now, interface. Now, what is an interface? Again, interface is like, for example, you and I currently we are together in this, sort of meeting, or you can say this training, or you can say this session which is going on. Correct. So interface is what? These are programmed logic that transfer the data from one IT system to another. For example, you are sitting over, you are accessing this information. Okay. So I'm just trying to explain something. So there's a flow of information which is moving from one system to another. Yeah, that is nothing but an interface. Yeah. So this interface may be programmed to transfer data from payroll subledger to general ledger. And that is what you see in the systems which the organization will always maintain. So if they will have some payroll data, that payroll needs to be processed, on the basis of which general ledgers need to be prepared. In this manner, IT dependencies arise due to system generated reports and the interfaces. Now, identifying and documenting the entity's IT dependencies in a consistent, clear manner helps to identify the entity's reliance upon IT, understand how IT is integrated into the entity's business model, identify potential risks arising from the use of IT, identify the related general controls related to the IT, and enable to develop an effective and efficient audit approach. Clear on this? Yeah, everyone clear? Any questions on this? Clear? Yeah? All right, so let's look at this. Next one. Emerging technologies can bring great benefits, but those emerging technologies also come with a varied set of substantial risks. Give some examples of technology risks of digital system and the control considerations while assessing the technology risk. I think this is what we have already discussed quite a lot. Over to you. Anyone will answer this? Quickly. Quickly, over to you. Who will answer this? Okay, so let's look at this. See some example of technology risks where the auditor should test the appropriate controls for relying on the digital systems. Now, what are those? Reliance on systems or the programs that are inaccurately processing data, which are processing inaccurate data, or both. See, there are two ways to it. there's a concept called as GIGO. What is GIGO? Garbage in, garbage out. Okay. So any information that you receive, you process that. You don't know whether that information is right or wrong. Okay. So in such a case, what are you doing? Let's suppose inaccurate data is received. Now you don't know whether that is accurate or not. You process that. So its outcome is obviously going to be inappropriate. Or maybe the data you have received is correct, but your processing is not appropriate. Okay. In both the cases, what will happen? In both the cases, outcome will not be appropriate. Yes or no? In both the cases, outcome will not be appropriate, right? So that's why, what do you need? You need to ensure that right information is processed in the right manner. Next, unauthorized access to data that might result in destruction of data or improper changes to data, including recording of unauthorized or non-existent transactions or inaccurate recording of transactions. Possibility of information technology personnel gaining access privileges beyond those necessary to perform their assigned duties, thereby leading to insufficient segregation of duties. Third, unauthorized or erroneous changes to data in master files. Again, very, very common. Unauthorized changes to systems or programs. Again, very, very common. Failure to make necessary or appropriate changes to systems. Again, at times you get to see this. Inappropriate manual intervention. Now, this is again a very common thing that you find in the organization. Inappropriate manual intervention. So even though the organization will have systems, they will have processes which are automated, still you will find some mental intervention. If you find that manual intervention, so what is going to happen? Definitely there's a risk. Potential loss of data or inability to access the data as required. Risks introduced when using third-party service providers. And of course, cyber security risks that we have already discussed. Clear? Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this next one. Yes, Prashant, please go ahead. I think you have a query. Yes, Prashant. Prashant, you have raised hand. Please speak up.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So the second part is not there in the answer.
Second part means what?
There was another part to the question. How will you? And control considerations.
See,
No,
when
no.
it comes,
There was some another question was there, no? Yes, the examples of technology, risk of digital, and the control considerations. So these were not addressed.
see, when it comes to the examples, so now alongside we have been discussing all of these control considerations as well. Maybe you're not seeing that it's written, but in terms of the discussions that we have been having, so we are talking about all of these control considerations. Huh? Okay, what are the control considerations? So let's suppose even if we talk about this first one itself. So if let's suppose.
No, so my question is, from
Yes.
whose point of view we considering the control considerations? From whose point of view?
See, there are always 2 points of view here. So whenever it comes to the control, you'll have to understand that who will set up the control. It has to be the management always, right? Why? Because to set up the control is the responsibility of the management. So that's why management has to ensure that appropriate control is set up to address the risk. Okay. So now at one place you have the management. Similarly, if let's suppose we talk about the auditor. Now, what is it that the auditor will do? In relation to this particular risk, let's suppose management has set up two controls, C1 and C2. Now, when you say from whose point of view you look at it, so management will look at it from its own point of view, okay, from the organization's point of view, right? Now, next comes the auditor. Now, what is it that the auditor will do? Auditor will also check, will assess whether any such risk is there. Auditor will say, yes, it's there. And what is the control which the management has put in place? Then the auditor will be looking at these two controls which the management would have put in place. Okay. So there again, you will look at it from the perspective of management only. Okay. So the control will always be from the perspective of the management. Clear, Prashant? Yes, Prashant, please go ahead.
So we'll do the aim part, that is assess the risk, impact, and manage. We'll write that in our answer, sir.
No, so see, when it comes to the question, okay, so let's understand the question. So it says emerging technologies involve some risks. You are required to give some examples of those risks. So let's suppose this is one example. And the control considerations to consider while assessing the technology risk. Now, please try to understand that whether you look at it from the perspective of the auditor or the management, every time the control around the risk will always be same. So it will not happen that management will think of a different control and auditor will think of a different control. Understood my point? For every risk, control will always be similar. Whether A will think about it or B will think about it. Yes or no? Yeah, Prashant? Clear on this now? Okay, great. Good. Right. So let's move further. Okay, so let's pick this and then we'll take a break. Huh? I think you'll also be looking at a break. So let's pick this one. And after this, we'll take a break, right? KLM Industries Limited, a mid-sized company engaged in consumer electronics manufacturing, has recently undergone a major digital transformation by implementation of a fully automated production tracking system, cloud-based accounting software, and a blockchain-based vendor payment system. These changes were introduced during the financial year 24-25. Okay. Management believes that these technologies will increase the efficiency and reduce the chances of errors, and hence have revised the risk assessment. Now, please understand, management has reassessed. Okay, so you can say the risk assessment was reassessed. As an auditor, what steps should you take to evaluate the impact of such technological changes on the company's internal control and financial reporting? So as far as this ICFR is concerned, okay, so now what is it that you'll do as an auditor? Over to you. Any thoughts? Yes, in respect of some of these systems which are put in place by the management. So what is it that you will want to focus upon? What is it that you will want to look at as an auditor? Over to you. Quickly, any thoughts? Any thoughts? No? All right, so let's look at this. So now what is it that the auditor will want to do? Maintain sufficient professional skepticism. Of course, this is required. Okay, this is of course a primary thing. Understand the direct and indirect effects of new technology and determine how its use impacts the auditor's overall risk assessment. Right? Understand how the technologies impact the flow of transactions. Assess the completeness of in-scope ICFR systems and design a sufficient and appropriate audit response. Of course, this is required to be put in place. Now, what do you mean by this? See, once you have looked at that entire system, so what will you want to do? You will want to do some risk assessment as an auditor. Now, risk assessment is what? What are the risks involved and how will that impact the risk of the auditor? Risk of the auditor as far as the controls are concerned as well as the financial statements are involved. Why? Because thereby or by doing that, what do you achieve? You will get on to the appropriate audit procedures. Assess the appropriateness of management's processes to select, develop, operate, and maintain controls. Now, please remember, whenever the controls are discussed, it will always be the control of the management. See, the controls are not of the auditors. Control will always be of the auditor. So that's why, what is it that the auditor will do? Auditor will only assess appropriateness of what? Management's processes and the controls which are related to the organization's technology. Okay, clear on this? So these are going to be the considerations on the part of the auditor. Yeah, clear? Any questions, any doubts so far? Any questions, any doubts? No? All right, so then I think we can take a break now. Yeah, Khalid is saying no, no questions. Great. All right, so then I think we can take a break now and let's continue after the break. Huh? Okay. Manish, we can take a break now. Yeah. All right, so let's move further. Just give me a minute. Okay, so moving further, now we will talk about sustainability development and the ESG assurance. So this is again, I would say, a largely reporting requirement on the part of the organization. But it's a new area which has come up in the last few years. And this is gaining advantage year on year. That is about ESG. We'll talk about it as to, what is the sustainability development, what is this ESG. All of these things are quite interrelated to each other, very common terms. But what are we discussing actually? What is the context right now? So you can say it's largely a reporting requirement. Okay. And when we say reporting requirement, we are not talking about the financial statements. We are talking about some additional reports which the organization is now required to produce and also provide to the regulatory authorities. Okay, which is largely the SEBI in the current context, but these things are increasing. Okay, so now let's try to understand as to what this sustainability is all about. See, sustainability as a term that we use is in respect of ensuring that the resources that we have, they are used in an optimum manner. And sustainability also requires resources to be used in a manner so that the environment is sort of working in a manner wherein lesser harm is made to that. In fact, you can say there are three words which comprise of ESG and which is used in the content in the context of this sustainability as well. What is that? Environment, social, and governance. Now, what does this environment stands for? Environmental stands for corporate climate policies. Energy usage. Now, in this case, what is the objective? What is the requirement on the part of the entity? See, the entity will be doing a lot of activities during the year. All of their activities are achieved at what? To generate more revenues, to generate higher profits. But alongside that, there is also a need that has been felt, which every organization needs to take care, and that is what? To take care of its environment. Means about the climate, about the usage of the resources, about the waste which the organization is generating, about the pollution which the organization is creating, okay, about the natural resources which the organization is consuming as a part of its process, and about the way different animals might be treated in relation to some of the processes of the organization. Okay. And how that can be used in the best manner possible. Or what is it that the entity has done to ensure that the climate is protected, or to ensure that the energy usage is more towards the green energy rather than the old resources which the organization was using. Okay, what is it that the organization has done during the year to ensure that the waste is reduced, to ensure that some of the efforts are there on the part of the organization to improve upon this pollution. Similarly, what are the social factors? It addresses the relationships the entity has and the reputation it fosters with the people. So it's all about people. It further includes labor relationships, diversity, inclusions. Every company operates with a broader and diverse society. That's the overall objective. Third is about the governance, which talks about the internal system of practices, controls, procedures which the entity adopts in order to govern itself, make effective investment decisions, comply with the law, meet the needs of all the stakeholders. Every entity which is itself a legal creation requires governance. Okay, so largely if you look at this ESG, this is what this ESG will include. Okay, so E will talk about the climate change, carbon emissions, natural resources, pollution and waste, how that can be cut down or significantly reduced, environment, opportunity, social, which will largely be about the people. Okay, labor management, health and safety, supply chain labor standards, product safety and quality, financial product safety. Okay, then social opportunity, access to communication, access to finance, all of these factors are required to be looked at. Governance, it's all about the governance of the organization. Okay, so corporate governance is something that we have heard quite a lot. So this is very much a part of governance within this ESG only. Corporate behavior means the business ethics which the organization is having, anti-competitive practices, corruption and instability. What are the policies and procedures to take care of that? Financial system and stability, tax transparency. So in respect of these three areas, what is it that the organization has done during the year? How the organization has contributed to these factors during the year? Organization is now required to report upon that, both in quantitative as well as qualitative terms. Okay, yeah. So there's a reporting requirement which is placed upon the organization. There are some sustainability development goals which the organization should plan to achieve. So these are the 17 SDGs: gender equality, climate action, affordable and clean energy, no poverty, zero hunger. Okay, all of these factors. So you can say these are more towards the social factors. These are not towards the, I would say, factors or the activities which will lead to increased profits or increased revenue. So we are not talking about those things over here. We are talking about society at large, right? So this is what has come up, and this is what the organization is required to achieve significantly. Okay, so for doing this, a reporting requirement has been put in place, which is also very commonly called as integrated report. Okay, so if you look at the annual report of the companies, when it comes to the listed companies, and again we'll talk about it, so there's a particular category of the companies which will fall within the purview of this. Okay, because there's also a mandatory reporting requirement now. So this is called as now integrated reporting. Okay, so what does it include? So there are 6 C's of integrated reporting. Financial capital, so we'll have to consider the factors such as pool of funds that is available to the organization, obtained through financing, debt, equity, grants, manufactured capital, which is seen as human created, production oriented equipment, natural capital, which is an input to the production of goods or services, human capital, people, skill and experience, social capital, which is all about the common values, behavior, key relationships, trust and loyalty, intellectual capital. Yeah, so this is what it comprises of. Now, every country is now moving towards this because it's a joint collaboration. Yeah, wherein each and every country is now moving towards this. So let's talk about India. So now, what is it that India has achieved so far, and what is it that has been going on? Okay, so there's a journey. So 2009, we had this CSR voluntary guidelines in place. 2011, then we had this national voluntary guidelines on social, environmental, and economic responsibilities of business. 2012 is when the SEBI mandated top 100 listed companies in India. What? To file the report, which was called as BRR, Business Responsibility Report. Okay. This was also made part of LODR regulations subsequently. Yeah. Then the SEBI introduced this integrated reporting that we just discussed for top 500 listed companies. Okay, this was required to be followed on a voluntary basis from financial year 17-18. And then you also had this national guidelines on responsible business conduct. 2019 is when the BRR was made mandatory for top 1000 listed companies. BRR is Business Responsibility Report. Then came the latest requirement, which is now going on and which is something we'll also look at practically. Okay, so we'll pull out one actual report of a company, BRSR. So earlier there was Business Responsibility Report. This was, you can say, sort of, its scope was widened. Instead of keeping it as Business Responsibility Report, this was changed to Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. Okay, so the new reporting requirements on ESG parameters, ESG's environment, social, and governance were introduced, and they were required to be reported upon by the entities. So initially this was on a voluntary basis, then it was made mandatory. Okay, so now in 2022, mandatory reporting of top 1000 listed companies in respect of BRSR was introduced along with the annual report. Now, as a result of this, what has happened? Some of the initiatives ICAI has also taken. ICAI has also issued a lot of publications on this, a lot of material on this, BRSR. Okay. In fact, ICAI has also set up one specific board, which is called as the board which introduces this business responsibility reporting requirements, which is also called as sustainability standards. Okay, so those have also been introduced. Now, reporting under BRSR is mandatory from financial year 22-23. This was initially voluntary. This was made mandatory from 22-23. Now, this is divided into 3 sections. So if you look at this reporting requirement, you will find 3 sections. Section A is about the general disclosures, which includes details of the company's products, services which they will have, operations, employee related details, its holding, subsidiary, associate companies, all of these. So this is about the information of the company in general. Section B talks about management process and disclosures. Section C talks about some 9 principles. Okay, so there are some 9 principles. We'll talk about those 9 principles also. So principle-wise performance of the entity is required to be disclosed. Okay. Now, companies are required to report upon KPIs in alignment with 9 principles. This section classifies the KPIs into 2 categories. What is the first category? Which is essential one. This would include data on training programs conducted, environmental data on energy, emission, water, waste management. Then it also categorizes KPIs into leadership indicators. And that is an optional disclosure, which talks about cycle assessments, details of conflict management policy, additional data on biodiversity, energy consumption, supply chain management, etc. Okay. So you can say section C has got two sort of categories. One is mandatory, second one is optional. Now these are the 9 principles, but what we'll do is we'll pull out one actual report, and in the actual report we'll look at all of these 9 principles. Okay. So I'll just flip through these 9 principles for the time being. We'll also try to understand as to how these have been reported upon by the entity. All of these 9 principles as to how they are aligning with those sustainability development goals. Okay. Now, there's also an assurance which has been made mandatory. Now, what is assurance? You can say it's a kind of audit. So now what SEBI has done is SEBI has currently started with the top 1000 listed companies. Okay, so this is the initial, you can say in a phased manner, this will be done. Very soon, remaining listed companies will also be required to follow this assurance requirement. Now, what do you mean by assurance? Assurance means in terms of those ESG disclosures, ESG reporting requirements, which the entity will have. You can say a practitioner will also be required to audit that. Okay. And issue the opinion on that. Okay. So they will have to issue the opinion on that. Right. Now, in this case, this will talk about assurance on sustainability information. Right. And what does it include? It will include everything which is there in the reporting requirements on the part of the entity, which the independent practitioner will have to audit. So is it required to be performed by the statutory auditor? Not necessarily, but generally statutory auditor is the one who is also doing this exercise. Right? Now, as regards the assurance, now this assurance initially was voluntary, but starting from financial year 23-24, this assurance has also been made mandatory. Okay. So now what is the methodology to provide assurance on this business responsibility and sustainability reporting? So of course, preliminary review will be done, on-site assessment, verification of ESG report will be done, issuance of assessment report will be done, and review will be performed. Yeah. So if there are any findings, that sort of assessment will be done. Yeah. Eventually, the opinion is required to be given. So we'll also talk about as to, how that opinion will be given. We'll also try to look at one report on that, assurance report on that. Okay, actual assurance report will look at. Now, sustainability reporting standards. This is something that we have already looked at. Now, some social audit standards have also been issued by the ICAI. Now, what are those? It's around eradicating hunger, poverty, malnutrition, inequality, promoting education. Okay, so around the social factors. So these have also been issued. Now, what is the role of auditor? Consideration of climate related risks in an audit of financial statements. Now, see, these are some of the factors which additionally are now required to be looked upon by the auditor. Why? Because this is increasingly the need which every organization is required to focus upon, and that's why the auditor will also be required to focus upon. Okay. Yeah. So now what I'll do is I'll just move on to an actual report. Just give me a minute. So what I'll do, just give me a minute. I'll move on to the actual report. All right. So now just increase its size. Okay, so now what we will do is, see, this report is something which is not very old. It's been 2 to 3 years. This reporting requirement has started, and also the assurance has started on that. Yeah, so that's why I thought it will be appropriate if you can just go through this actual sort of report, so that you can also get a perspective, as to how this report will look like. We'll also look at some of the disclosure requirements around this. Now, this is the annual report of the company for the financial year 24-25. So we are looking at TCS right now. Okay. So this is the integrated reporting framework, wherein they are talking about financial capital, human capital, intellectual capital. So if you want, I can just go to this. Okay. So over here, if you can just see, they are talking about the integrated business model, which the entity is having. Right. Can you see this? Yeah. So value creation using the 5 capitals. So social capital, as to what does it include? Customers, investors, employees, government, human capital. So they have defined. So now when they have defined, this is in the context of each and every company. Okay. Now for the financial capital. So what is the value creation they have done? They have explained this. Similarly, if you talk about the next parameter, human capital. Okay. So employees that they have, attrition rate that they have. Yeah. So some of these factors they have explained. Right. Now what I'll do is I'll just take you to the BRSR report, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. Now, let's try to look at this report. As we discussed, this report has got 3 sections. Remember, there are 3 sections. So section A, let's go through this section A first. This section A talks about general disclosures, general information in respect of this particular company. So you can just read this information. SIN number of the company, name of the company, year of incorporation. Can you see this? Registered office address, corporate office, email address, telephone, website, financial year for which the reporting is being done, name of the stock exchange where the shares are listed. So we are continuing on section A. Then it talks about paid up capital of the company, right? Name and contact details of the person who may be contacted in case of any queries on the BRSR report. So are you able to now appreciate some of these points? Yeah, looks much better. So can you now connect to the disclosure requirements? Quickly, please confirm. Yeah. So can you now relate to some of those points which are there in the chapter with this actual reporting requirement? Yeah. So once you actually look at the report, that's how you get, more clarity on this. Correct? Then the reporting boundary. So they have explained this BRSR report is prepared on a consolidated basis. Information or data measurement techniques used, basis of calculation estimates have been mentioned in the relevant sections. Name of the assurance provider. Now, if you remember on this report, assurance is required. So who has provided that? So they have named that firm. So it is KPMG Assurance and Consulting Services LLP. That's the name of the firm. Type of assurance obtained. Okay. So they are saying on BRSR core indicators, reasonable assurance has been obtained. On select BRSR indicators, limited assurance has been obtained. We'll talk about all of these areas. Then, information is required about the products of the company. So it says details of business activities. It says company provides IT services, consulting and business solutions to many of the world's largest businesses in their transformational journeys. Further details are provided in MD&A section of integrated annual report. Now this is not called as annual report. This is called as integrated annual report. Okay. Then products or services sold by the entity. So it says application development and maintenance, consulting and service integration, digital transformation services, cognitive business operations, and products and platforms. Okay. Yeah. Then operations. So they are saying in India, how many plants do they have? 1. Number of offices, 127. Internationally, how many offices do they have? 183. Markets served by the entity. So in India, 28 states, 8 union territories are served. Internationally, 54 countries are served. Then it says, what is the contribution of exports as a percentage of total turnover? 91.4%. Right? Then the brief on the customers is also given. So we are still on section A. So this section A is all about general information for the company. Then the information about the employees is given. For the employees, including differently abled, permanent and other than permanent is required to be given. How many male, how many female are required to be given. Okay. Then for differently abled employees, permanent, other than permanent are given. Male, female are given. So complete data company is required to put down. Correct? Then next, the company is also required to specify participation, inclusion, or representation of women. So they are saying board of directors, total 8 directors are there. Okay, right? 2 are female. So what is the proportion? 25%. Similarly, KMP, they have specified no female. Turnover rate for permanent employees. So they have given the periodic information of the turnover rate, means attrition rate, which the company is facing. Holding companies, subsidiary company, associate, all of these information is required to be produced here. Right? Then CSR details, whether the CSR is applicable, turnover of the company, net worth of the company, this information is also required to be included. So currently we are still in section A. Then there are some disclosures around the transparency in terms of compliances. So complaints or grievances on any of the 9 principles. So there are some 9 principles. We'll talk about those 9 principles also. If there were any complaints, okay, so you are required to put down some information on that. Grievance redressal mechanism, whether that was in place. If yes, you need to give the link of that. So the company has given the link. So how many complaints filed during the year? They are saying nil. For shareholders, how many complaints? 92. Number of complaints pending a resolution at the end of the year? 8. Okay. Number of complaints filed during the year? 128. Number of complaints pending a resolution? 4. So this way, entire information. So you can say it's a sort of template. Yeah, it's a fixed format which has been notified, which the company is required to put down in section A. Right? Now, moving on to section B. In section B, management and the process which the management follows in respect of 9 principles that is required to be disclosed. Okay. Now, what are those 9 principles? So let's flip through some of the principles. First, business should conduct and govern themselves with ethics, transparency, and accountability. So this is one of the principles. Similarly, P3, if you look at, businesses should promote well-being of all employees. So these are the 9 principles which are defined. So it's not specific to the entity. So these are the 9 defined principles. Every entity will have to follow these 9 principles. Okay. Now, in respect of these 9 principles, some disclosure questions are given. These disclosure questions are also specified. Company will have to answer these questions. So if you look at this first set of questions, which is around policy and management process. First, whether your entity's policy or policies cover each principle and its core elements, they are saying yes. To each principle, they will have to specify. They can't say for all yes, one. No. For each principle, they will have to answer individually. Okay. They will have to answer individually for each principle. Right? Has the policy been approved by the board? They are answering this for each principle. Web link of the policies. So they are giving the web link. So they are saying you go refer Tata Code of Conduct, whistleblower policy, green procurement policy. They have specified for each and every principle. Okay. Within those policies, they are saying all of these principles we have taken care of. Clear? Next, moving further. Now this way, all of these questions. So we are on section B now. Different questions will be asked, which the management will have to respond. So let's look at this question 7. This is about governance, leadership, and oversight. It talks about statement by the director responsible for business responsibility report, highlighting ESG related challenges, targets, and achievements. So what is the response of the company? Let's read this. At TCS, ESG principles are deeply embedded in our core business values, enabling us to build a resilient, future-ready enterprise. We believe in giving back to the communities we serve with impactful initiatives in education, healthcare, and skill development. Our commitment to transparency, ethical conduct, strong corporate governance remains unwavering. Our ESG roadmap is an ongoing journey rooted in purpose and driven by a vision to create lasting positive change for society and environment. So this way, you will find each and every question entity will have to answer. Okay. Then we move on to the section C. If you remember in section C, there are two parts: essential indicators, optional indicators. For each principle, those will have to be answered. So for principle 1, now what will happen is, now you'll have to go principle by principle. For principle 1, you'll have to provide some information questions. So what is the first principle? Businesses should conduct and govern themselves with integrity and in a manner that is ethical, transparent, and accountable. So in this case, percentage covered by training and awareness programs on any of the principles during the financial year. So company is saying yes. For board of directors, 21 training programs were held. Okay. And percentage of persons in the respective category covered by the awareness programs, they are saying 100%. For KMPs, 20 such training programs were held. All KMPs were covered. Employees other than board of directors and KMPs, they are saying 26,881 training programs were held. 98% of the employees were covered. Okay. Similarly, if you move further on this, on the same principle number 1, different questions will be asked. Okay, so let me just read some more questions. It says, does the entity have an anti-corruption or anti-bribery policy? If yes, provide details in brief, and if available, provide a web link. So they are saying yes. TCOC contains guidelines on anti-bribery and anti-corruption. TCS is committed to upholding the highest moral and ethical standards and does not tolerate bribery or corruption in any form. Policy is available on the company's website. So they have also given a link. Okay. right? Similarly, if you go down, you will see for each principle, different set of requirements are there which the company is answering. Can you see this? Principle 2, then principle 3 is covered, then you have this principle 4 which is getting covered. Yeah, so this way, if you want, okay, if you want to get more familiar with this, I would suggest you can just read this with peace of mind later on. You can just pull out any large listed company. See, as of now, it's not applicable to everyone. Yeah, so large listed company you need to pull out. Okay, so now moving further, now what could be the next principle? Okay, so let's try to go through some of the points around this principle 8 as well. So the principle 8 talks about businesses should promote inclusive growth and equitable development. Okay, so here again, what are the questions? Describe the mechanisms to receive and redress grievances of the community. So they have explained their process. Percentage of input material sourced from the suppliers. So they are saying directly sourced from MSME, small producers, 7.8%, sourced directly from within India, 46.6%. Job creation in smaller towns. So the company is required to disclose the wages paid to persons employed, including employees or workers employed on a permanent or non-permanent, that means contract basis, in the following locations as a percentage of total wage cost. Okay, so this way you will find this information. Then you have this principle 9 which talks about similar sort of information, right? So now what I'll do is I'll take you to the assurance report, some things which is really relevant for us as an auditor and as an independent practitioner. Now in this case, if you look at this assurance report, you will find this very much similar to any other audit report. But over here, please remember, it's not an audit of financial statements. So what is it? It's an assurance on BRSR, right? So it is addressed to the board of directors. So the structure and layout you will find to be very much similar. Okay. So they are saying assurance report on the sustainability disclosures in the BRSR. Okay. Period is also specified 24-25. Then they are giving opinion. We have performed reasonable assurance engagement on whether the company's sustainability disclosures in the BRSR core format for the period, because it's for the period, right? April 24 to March 25 have been prepared in accordance with the reporting criteria. Now, what is the reporting criteria? They have laid out the reporting criteria. Something similar to what you see in case of financial statements. Okay. In our opinion, companies identified sustainability information on pages 127 to 164. Now, what they have done is they have also specified the pages on this annual report itself. Is prepared in all material respects in accordance with regulations of the SEBI regulations. Correct? Then they have again, in a similar manner, what you see in case of audit report, given the basis for opinion. Okay. So when the basis of opinion is given, then they will also talk about other information. Yeah. Intended usage or purpose, management responsibility. So they are saying the management of the company acknowledges for designing, implementing, maintaining internal controls relevant to the preparation of this information. Okay, all sort of those management responsibilities in a similar manner have been put down. Inherent limitations, if there are any inherent limitations, are responsibilities. Okay, so they are explaining what is their responsibility on assurance. So we are responsible for planning and performing the engagement to obtain reasonable assurance on the sustainability disclosures. Okay, whether they are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, in accordance with the reporting criteria. Forming an independent opinion based on the procedures we have performed and the evidence we have obtained. And reporting our reasonable assurance opinion to the board of directors, right? Then exclusions, if there are any exclusions. So you can say it's all about the other matter para, which you find in case of audit report. So if there are some exclusions, those are also specified. And then this report is in a similar manner signed off by the partner of the firm. Date, place, all of those things are specified. Clear on this? Yeah. So this was all about the report. I thought it's better if you can just go through this report. You will get a feeler, as to how this report really looks like. So this will help you. Okay. So now what we can do is, now we can just move on to some questions. Okay, so now we'll pick up some questions on this chapter as well, and then I'll also try to pick up some questions from RTP as well, right? In fact, let me just move to RTP first of all. Just a minute. Okay, so let's look at this one. Okay, so this is the RTP for January 26. Yeah. Green Tech Manufacturing Limited engaged in the production of electronic appliances has been facing criticism from environmental activists and local communities for its high energy consumption, discharge of untreated industrial waste. Okay. Dependence on non-renewable resources. Considering the same, the company's management now wants to strengthen its environmental responsibility practices and align them with national and international commitments such as Paris Agreement and National Action Plan on Climate Change. Identify the principle which is being referred to in this case. Also state the core elements associated with this principle. Over to you. Over to you quickly. Yes, quickly. Can you identify the core principles which is linked to this? Quickly, huh? Yes. Okay, Gita says it has to be principle 6. Very good. So now, principle 6, protection and restoration of environment is being referred to in the given case. Correct? So that's the one which is referred to. Sumit is asking, sir, how do you remember the principle? See, the only way you remember the principle is by trying to understand that. Okay. Of course, I understand that you'll have to memorize whether it's principle 1. So to that extent, I think you'll have to just, sort of mug up. But I think if you can just try to connect all of these points with the relevant stuff which is explained. Okay. The best way to do that will be to go through that annual report. Yeah. So maybe you can just download that annual report. Just go through the principles. There are 9 principles. For each principle, some information is given. See, if you read the principle and the information which is given along that, what will happen is you will get some clarity as to, what are the linked points to that principle. Okay. So that way your connect will become easier in terms of linking the information to the principle. That is one. Number 2, you'll also be able to memorize those. Of course, numbering you may tend to forget. So that's why I'm saying to a certain extent, you'll have to mug up. But I would say that's the best way to do this unless you have some other way. Huh? Okay. And this way you'll also be getting the practical aspect of it. Okay. As to how the companies are actually doing this. Very simple. Huh? Okay. Maybe you can just try this, or otherwise, if you want, you can just mug up. Okay. Sixth principle looks at the environmental responsibility as a basic requirement for economic prosperity and sustainability. Now, what are the core elements which are associated with this? Entities should have policies, procedures, practices in place to assess, rectify the impacts to the environment. This should cover whole life cycle of the product. Entities have to make use of natural and man-made resources in an optimum manner to ensure their sustainability by taking feedback from the stakeholders. Entities have to measure their performance relating to the prevention of pollution, destruction of forests, waste generation, energy use. Entities have to contribute towards climate change resilience in line with India's commitment to various international mechanisms. So in this case, if you can just remember some of these international mechanisms, it's good. If you don't remember, that's okay. Okay, so to that extent, I can understand your concern. Entities should explore comparison of its activities with industry best practices to reduce, reuse, recycle, recover materials, resources. Okay. Companies have to look out for avenues by which they can improve their performance towards various environmental responsibilities. Right? Okay, so I think what we can also do here is we can also look at one more question within the same RTP. Okay, that is about digital audit. So let's look at this question as well. Okay, the topic that we just covered. During the audit of Long Limited, auditor came across following instances. Finance team relies on a system generated customer aging report while reviewing overdue balances of trade receivables. Payroll module is designed in such a way that the person entering the employee attendance cannot approve the salary disbursement, thereby enforcing segregation of duties. Purchase order system of the company does not allow processing of duplicate vendor codes and automatically rejects entries where the vendor GST number is already present. ERP system automatically computes depreciation on fixed assets PPE by applying SLM based on input values of cost, residual value and useful life, which is good. You are required to identify the type of IT dependency involved in each of the above scenarios. Over to you, quickly. We have already discussed about IT dependencies. Yes. Can you identify the type of IT dependency? Great. Sumit says robotic process automation. What about others? Quickly, huh? What is the IT dependency which is involved in each of the above scenarios? Yes. Over to you quickly. So let's look at this, right? Finance team relies on system generated customer aging report while reviewing overdue balances of trade receivables. So what is the type? It's a report. Yes or no? It's actually a report. Yeah. System generated reports are information generated by the IT systems. These reports are often used in entities' execution of a manual control, including business performance reviews, or maybe the source of entity information used by us when selecting items for testing, performing substantive tests, or performing substantive analytical procedures. Okay, then if you look at payroll module, now payroll module is designed in such a way that the person entering the employee attendance cannot approve the salary disbursement, thereby enforcing segregation of duties. So what type of you can say IT dependency you will see? Security, including the segregation of duties. Security, including the segregation of duties. Okay, next. Purchase order system of company does not allow processing of duplicate vendor codes and automatically rejects entries where the vendor GST number is already present. So what do you have? It's an automated control, right? Automated controls are designed into the IT environment to enforce business rules. Fourth, ERP system automatically computes depreciation. So what is this dependency that we have? Calculations. So you can say it is also sort of embedded in the system. You can say it's programmed over there. Yeah, so the moment you give the inputs, it will automatically be computed by the system, right? So now what we can do is we can just pick up some more examples. So I'll pull out one more RTP now. Okay, just give me a minute. Yeah. Okay. So this I have picked up for September 25. Okay, so we'll just try to pick up. Okay. Right. So let's look at this one. Skin Glow Limited, an e-commerce company dealing in skincare products, promotes its newly launched cream on its official website as 100% natural and chemical free. However, a review of the product label reveals presence of artificial fragrance and preservatives. Okay. A customer who noticed the same tried to complain, but there was no proper complaint form or helpline available on the website of the company. Additionally, company's website states that its primary business objective is to offer useful products and services to the customers in exchange of reasonable profits. With reference to the principles of BRSR framework, identify which of the principle is being referred. Also state the core elements of this principle. Over to you. Quickly, which of the principle you think is being covered? Quickly, which principle is getting covered? Over to you, quickly. Which principle is covered in this case? Yes, good. Gita says principle 9, which is value to the customer. Sumit is asking, so can the nomenclature be different in the last answer? See, you should try to keep that as close as possible. Otherwise, it's not appropriate. Okay. Now, in this case, principle 9 is the one which you will link to this. Provide value to the consumers in a responsible manner. Yes or no? So can you relate to this point with the situation which is there, right? In the case of Skin Glow, misrepresentation of the product contents, lack of proper grievance mechanism, they are in direct conflict with this principle 9. Yes or no? So therefore, what should the company do? Company needs to take the corrective measures to ensure alignment of its operations with the responsible business practices. What is that? Entities should put in their efforts to reduce the negative impacts of their products and the services on consumers, natural environment, society at large. When conceptualizing, designing, marketing their products, organization should not in any manner prevent the freedom of choice and fair competition. Entities should transparently and accurately disclose all kinds of adverse impacts to the user, planet, society on the biodiversity from their products. Further, there are a lot of other points, and I'm not reading all of those points. You can just flip through them later on. Entities should inform the customers on the same and safe and responsible ways of usage, reuse, recycling, disposal of their products. Okay. Business enterprises should make available transparent and accessible grievance redressal feedback management system for their customers so that the customers can raise their voices if required, seek clarifications. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's look at one more. Okay, so just give me a minute. All right. So let's look at this one. Okay. Sujal is appointed as auditor of Kashish Limited, a company heavily dependent on digital platforms for its core business operations. During the preliminary discussions with the management, Sujal observes following gaps in the company's IT risk management framework. 1. No recent risk assessment of IT environment has been conducted. No documented strategy for maintaining cyber security threats such as unauthorized access, system failures, or potential data breaches was found. Company has not classified its information assets or reviewed the systems connected to its digital infrastructure. There are no defined roles such as Chief Information Security Officer, Chief Information Officer. They do not exist to manage cyber security responsibilities. There's been no discussion with those charged with governance on how cyber security risks may impact internal controls, especially over financial reporting and revenue recognition. As an auditor, what should be the first step of Suraj in response to the above mentioned observations? Over to you. Quickly, how would you deal with this as an auditor of the company? Quickly, over to you. So as an auditor of the company, how would you deal with this? Tell me, what do you do? So let's look at this. So if let's suppose you were the auditor of this company, auditor has to determine whether the entity's risk assessment process considers cyber security risks or not, which is not the case. Okay, Geeta has added to this, sir, professional skepticism. Yes, of course, that will have to be in place. But what is it that you do as an auditor? Of course, professional skepticism, you can say, is a quality which has to be applied. But in respect of what? Okay. Entity should conduct periodic risk assessment, develop management strategy which identifies cyber security risks around IT system failure. Okay. Entity should maintain and periodically review an inventory of their information assets. Entity should classify and prioritize protection of their information assets. From the governance perspective, management should review how security risks affect the internal controls. Management needs to identify if any established risk-based cybersecurity program can be leveraged. So as an auditor, what do you do? So you will have to identify all of these risks which are attached to this. Okay. All right. So I'll just pick up some more questions. Just give me a minute. All right. So now moving further. Okay. So let's look at this one. Trustworthy Industries Limited is a listed company. This has already been preparing and disclosing its sustainability report based upon internationally accepted reporting framework of integrated reporting on a voluntary basis. Okay, so this is what the company has been doing on a voluntary basis. Even some years before the BRSR reporting made mandatory. Even after BRSR reporting became mandatory, it is cross-referencing disclosures made under such reporting to disclosures sought under BRSR. The key thrust of integrated reporting is how the company creates value over short, medium, and long term. Following information is available. It has increased the number of customers using digital customer mobile app, which is from 2 lakh users to 4 lakh users now. Okay, so this is what the company has achieved. There is 100% increase in digital collection. It has benefited customers of the company and resulted in usage of digital methods for business operations of the company. Okay, so increase the number of customers, 100% increase in digital collection. Further, it has increased the number of beneficiaries under its flagship CSR programs, which was 10,000 earlier to 75,000. So it's a significant jump. It has provided value for communities and provided sustainable livelihood to them. Okay. Discussing the above information, identify which of the capitals of integrated reporting are being referred to in first and second. Over to you quickly. So which of the capitals are being referred to? Over to you quickly. Okay, so Geeta is saying first one, wherein the number of the customer is increasing, okay, or the digital collection is getting 100%, is financial capital. Very good. Second is social capital. All right. What about others? Quickly, yeah. What about others? So first one is financial, second one is social. What about others? Quickly. Quickly, yeah. So let's look at this. Okay. Now, sustainability reporting is an organization's practice. Okay, so I think Prashant has the same answer. Huh? Financial and human. Okay, sure. So let's look at this. Sustainability reporting is an organization's practice of reporting publicly on economic, environmental, social impacts. Yeah. Sustainability reporting refers to information that the companies provide about their performance to the outside world on a regular basis. Okay, it's a comprehensive mechanism of giving out these disclosures. So what are the expected benefits? It can help the stakeholders to understand various organizations' performance. Okay, such reporting can help the entities to focus on long-term value creation, right? So I think this one is not really linked to the one. So I think first one is financial, as you rightly mentioned, and second is the. So I think maybe the linkage of the solution is different, right? All right. So now let's look at the second one. CTO Limited is engaged in the fintech business. Okay. It is a member of few prominent industry chambers and trade associations and has come under mandatory purview of BRSR reporting for the financial year 22-23. Company had submitted inputs on a draft digital protection data protection bill to concerned ministry during the year. It has also submitted to one of the industry chambers during the same year certain key inputs on leveraging India's digital public infrastructure for creating solutions by banks and fintechs together as its task force member on the subject. Considering the above, discuss how the above information would likely be disclosed by the company in principle-wise performance disclosures. Whether the information discussed above would be required to be disclosed mandatorily. So let's understand. See, the given case highlights that the company is a member of various associations. Such information needs to be disclosed under Principle 7. Principle 7 recognizes that businesses, when engaging in influencing public regulatory policy, operate within the framework. Information under each principle is to be disclosed under essential indicators as well as leadership indicators, which are optional. Information relating to membership of chamber associations is in the nature of essential indicators and therefore requires mandatory disclosures. Information relating to inputs provided by the company to the ministry on this legislative bill and inputs provided to one of the prominent chambers on leveraging India's digital public infrastructure as a task force member. They are in the nature of leadership positions taken by the company and therefore those are optional disclosures. Okay, clear on this? So with this, we are through. Any questions, any doubts that you may have, we can discuss. Otherwise, we can just close this discussion up. Any questions, any doubts? Anyone? Over to you. No questions? All right. So thanks everyone for your time and for this participation. I would request everyone to just make sure that whatever we have covered, you practice that with more questions. Of course, a lot of questions are available. Yeah. And also, in terms of that integrated reporting, in terms of that BRSR reporting, you can just go through that document that's available. You can just do Google, you can just download the integrated annual report. Okay. That will also help you. Yeah. So if you plan to do that. Okay. So thanks everyone for your time today. Thanks so much. Yes, Manish, we can close.